Welcome back, everybody. Week 2 of the Pitt mailbag here for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Noah Hiles, Chris Carter, your Pitt football and basketball and all other sports, Pitt athletics beat reporters here for the PG. And Chris, no game to break down this week.
It's nice to have a bye week, isn't it,
It
Noah?
sure is. I woke up this morning and normally my Monday routine is I wake up, I will watch some highlights of the Pitt game again. I'll review, a little bit of the tape, just see what's going on. I'll watch some highlights of their upcoming opponent. And as I eat breakfast, I will sit and think of questions to ask Pat Narduzzi. I did not do that this morning, simply because I didn't get to talk to him. No media availability on Monday, which was nice. Nice little bye week. And because it's the bye week, we appreciate everyone submitting their questions for this mailbag. Got some emails, got some Twitter DMs, and continue to do that. You can find us on social media. You can find our emails. But instead of reading those this week, we're going to save them for another time because it's the midway point. What we're going to do instead is just give our midseason grades. Chris, did you get good grades when you were growing up?
If I didn't,
you were in law school.
I got whooped. Yeah, like it was that. I came home with 2 C's one year, and my mom came home from work and like woke me up and was just like, "What is this?" And like that was it. I never got 2 C's again in my life.
I remember. I distinctly remember like my freshman year. I like had it was like the only time in my life I had a GPA under 3, and like it was like first 9 weeks or something. And I remember my dad like. We were like out to eat or something. He was like, what do you think's going on? And I like looked at him all serious. I was like, Dad, I'm going D1. So like, this doesn't matter. And he was like, no, you're 5'5" right now. And like, and he was like, dude, like, no, you're not. Like, and I was like when he said that, like there were kids on my team who were getting recruited to like D2 schools. He's like, you think you're going to be better than him? I was like, no, I didn't think about it like that. And then like the next semester, I think I had like a 3.7 or something. Like I was like, oh, I better start focusing. But I always kind of knew what I needed to do. So like I probably could have been like a high honor student if I wanted to, but I was like, I'm just gonna really focus on like English and writing and any type of classes that suit my interests. And then kind of just coast. I knew where I wanted to go to college. Knew I was gonna get in there. When I got there, I was more focused on just like, doing student radio and student newspaper stuff and just, get my grades good enough where my parents will be mad at me and get that piece of paper, which worked out because look, we're here. So that's the background on her.
I would have been in trouble.
Oh yeah, and my parents were just kind of like, look, like he looks like he knows what he's got going on. Like after that reality check, I think it was like a Texas Roadhouse or something. My dad just like dropped his knife. He's like, "You're not going D1." Like I was like, "Oh no." Anyway, so
let's give our grades.
That concludes our educational backgrounds. Let's get into the grades for Pitt. You want to start on the offense or defensive side of the ball?
Let's start on the offense. Let's talk about those guys.
Well, we're starting off with an interesting one. Probably the grade that everyone that's going to read this or watch this is looking to hear what we think. Quarterback, Chris, what do you give the quarterback position as a whole through 6 games in Pitt season?
I give it a D+.
Okay.
Simply because I think there's plenty of times where they could have been better. I was giving Kedon Slovis, like honestly, through one game, I didn't have many complaints about it. The Tennessee game, they got hurt. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Western Michigan, I was like, okay, cool. But these last 3 games have not been impressive. They didn't do enough against Rhode Island, and part of that was also they didn't let them air it out, and I thought that was a problem. But then they just didn't click at all. The passing game's non-existence was the biggest reason for the Georgia Tech loss, in my opinion. And then against Virginia Tech, they abandoned it. They were just like, I mean, I wrote it in my story after the game. Like I was standing there in the hallway and Frank Signetti Jr. was like, let's take this game over. Yeah. And they went from passing and running 17 times each in the first half to running 4 times more than they threw in the second half. And I was like, that's what he meant. It was just that. So I don't think Kedon Slovis is doomed to be bad forever. I think that he could certainly step it up, but I think he needs timing. I think he needs chemistry. It's something that Kenny needed to develop in Pitt's offense. And I don't think that Kedon is Kenny, but I do think that when you're looking at this, how this team works, they need Kedon Slovis to do more, and he just hasn't done enough so far.
Yeah, I give it a D. I think that even at Kedon Slovis's best that we saw in the first half of the Tennessee game, I think, and he did look good. He made a lot of good throws in that game. But there were also a couple balls that he threw in that first half that should have been intercepted. And people forget about that. He threw a couple right into the hands of Tennessee defenders. So like he wasn't, even at his best this year, he hasn't been spectacular, which would warrant an A. But then you look, so if at his best he is a B plus, at his worst he's been an F. He's just quite literally been an F. So for me, I just think that you bring that in, you grade how Nick Patty played in the second half against Tennessee, even when he was healthy, and then Nate Yarnell got the job done. But let's be real, like he threw 12 times against Western Michigan. How good was he? He threw a couple nice deep balls, and he showed some poise, and he had command of the offense. But so far, this has been the worst area of the team, in my opinion. So I give it a D. Running back, I will start here. I'll give it an A. The only reason I don't give it an A plus is because I think the running back play against Georgia Tech, played a big role in why they lost. Where Vincent Davis's 2 fumbles were just as costly as Kedon Slovis's poor play in the first half.
They hurt bad. I do agree with that.
So, like, if you take that out, and like Vincent Davis has been good aside from that, he still ran for like 80 yards in that game on like 14 carries. But game by game, every game that Pitt's won this year, and in one of the 2 losses, you can look at a running back that really saved the day. Against West Virginia, it was Rodney Hammond. And while Izzy scored the game-winning touchdown, another running back, Kedon did make some big throws on that drive. But if Rodney Hammond doesn't get going there, who knows what happens with that Pitt offense? Because it wasn't clicking early on. And then against Tennessee, even though that was a loss, I mean, that was Izzy's coming out party. And then the last however many weeks when he's been able to play, I mean, it's been Izzy's world. We're living in it. So Israel Abanikanda, I mean, I guess the only reason I wouldn't give him an A plus is because he didn't stay healthy against Georgia Tech. Don't know if I can even dock him for that. He might just get a 99% rather than a 100. But overall, I think the running back position has been one of the best groups in the country, I think. So
I
far.
agree. I agree. And the thing is that Rodney Hammond looked like in game 1 that he was the better of the 2. And now we've kind of forgotten about that because Izzy Abanikanda has just been so good. And I think that's something that you have to take into account if you're looking forward. Like, Rodney Hammond, we both saw against Virginia Tech, he was on the field warming up.
He looked good too, man. He looked good. He looked smooth.
He looked smooth. I do think that had it come down to it, like if Abanikanda went down and then Davis went down, I think they would have said, Rodney, we need you, man. But I think they didn't want to be put in that position, which is why I think they leaned on Izzy as much as they had to get the wins, that they weren't worried about anything. But man, I do think I give them an A as well. I avoid the A plus again because of the 2 fumbles, but the 1-2 punch that these guys could provide could be the most lethal thing in the ACC as far as a ground game goes. I mean, Abanikanda by himself is the best running back in the ACC right now, but these 2 combined, and with Pitt's offensive line, which we'll get to here shortly, I think that they are one of the more lethal threats in the conference, and it gives you time to figure out what to do with Kedon Slovis.
Wide receivers, what do you got for me?
I go C minus.
Oh my gosh, you're reading my mind. I had the exact same thing. I even wrote it down beforehand.
That's crazy because, like, they're not failing, but they're not playing well either. Like Jared Wayne has been huge for this team. He has done a lot. I think he's a lot better than people gave him credit for, and still give him credit for. But Bub Means has been wildly inconsistent. There's times I'm like, hey, that's pretty good. And there's other times I'm like, why'd they go get him? Konate Mumfield, he missed the last game because he wasn't healthy. I think he's a young player who's still learning how to be who he needs to be. I think he has a lot of potential, and there's times he's made some really big plays. He gets really good separation. But I think he still has to put it together. I think the same thing with Jaden Bradley. I think there's times that he looks really, really good, And there's times you're like, why is he out there? Because he drops passes, he misses opportunities, and you're just like, man, you need consistency from the group. And I think that's why they're a C-, because they have really good sparks across the board, but they're wildly inconsistent, and they have to improve on that to be a better unit.
This receiving core looks like a receiving core that just had a top-tier talent leave.
I agree.
If they had Jordan Addison, I think this would be an A group, because Jared Wayne, I think, can be a top-tier receiver. I think he does have that talent, but I think he'd be a lot better if he was a number 2. I think that on a really, really good team, on a college football playoff team, Jared Wayne is a number 2 receiver. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you go look at the number 2 receivers on college football playoff teams from the last years, go ahead and look what they're making now in the NFL.
Yeah.
So, that's not me taking a jab at Jared Wayne in any way, shape, or form. And I think it also would have allowed for Konate Mumfield to not have to take on as much, where when Addison left, it was kind of like, all right, Mumfield, you were this freshman All-American. Let's see what you got. Bub Memes, you were freshman All-Conference USA. Let's see what you got. And they had to take on more. Where when they were coming here, that wasn't part of the thing that they kind of agreed on. They're not going to back down from it, and props to them for trying their best. But so far, yeah, I don't think that really anyone in the receiving core has been exciting. They've shown flashes of it, but I wouldn't call them really. No one there is really reliable right now, aside for number 5. But I will say this: for all the negatives, for the drops, for the I feel like Pitt gets called for a false start from receiver once a game, which is just insane to me.
Yep.
For all those errors, there are some definitive moments you could point at, most of them coming from Jared Wayne, where they made big plays. Jared Wayne's touchdown to bring that game to overtime against Tennessee was probably single-handedly the biggest play of the season for Pitt, as far as clutch moment right there.
Well, I'd say
with the exception of MJ Devonshire had a big one.
And Izzy's touchdown in that same game.
Yeah, but I would argue, but that touchdown he scored on 4th and goal there from Nick Patty, that was saved, clutch. Yeah, that was so clutch. And also just their ability to catch and run. And a lot of that was running backs. Hammond did it, Izzy did it against West Virginia, but Jared Wayne's long catch and run. And if we're going to include Gavin Bartholomew in here too as a pass catcher, he's been really good. So I think C- is a fair grade for the receivers. I'm optimistic that grade will get better, though, compared to other grades that I've already given out or grades that I will give out later, where I am maybe not as optimistic that it will improve, that this is just what they have. So we'll move on to the offensive line now. I'll give them a B. I'll give them a B. I think that early on, they said it themselves against West Virginia, they didn't do well. Tennessee was a tough task. I think they held their own, but since then, the offensive line has been fantastic. They were great against Western Michigan with their 4th-string quarterback. They dominated Rhode Island like they should have. I thought the running lanes were there against Georgia Tech, but they couldn't run the ball because one of the running backs that was healthy just couldn't hold on to it. And the quarterback, when he dropped back to pass, wasn't able to take advantage of the time that they gave him. And I think they, 320 yards from one running back last weekend shows that they did an okay job. So I'm very optimistic that they will continue to get better. They've gotten better pretty much every week of the year, but I'm going to give them a B right now.
I'm going to go slightly higher and give them a B+.
Okay.
Because I think that they've done a good job also protecting Kedon Slovis. And they did a good job of protecting Nate Yarnell. I think those two things were very important, but I also think they have gradually gotten better. But I want to show you guys how much better, even just beyond the yards against West Virginia, which, Izzy got 15 yards on the ground. Against Tennessee, Israel Abanikanda had 154 rushing yards against Tennessee. 122 of those came after contact. That's 79% of his yards coming after, hitting a defender.
You were a Dean's List guy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was. I have a lot of those pins on my in my cabinet over there. Yeah. When you looked at Western Michigan, better, but still 80 yards after contact out of 133 total yards. That's 60%. And then Saturday. Yeah. See, there goes my Dean's List. But 88 yards out of 322. That means 70. That means only, what was it? 27.5% of Israel Abanikanda's yards came after contact. They are blocking so much more consistently and with other guys. Like I noted in my film study article that came out Monday. Yeah, you have Jake Cradle at center. He's the right guard. Blake Zuvovic at right guard. He's a backup. You had Gabe Hoy at right tackle go down in the game, be replaced by Matt Gonsalves. Marcus Minor was the only guy who was at the position that was natural to him, and Carter Warren went down, and you had Branson Taylor come in and play well. You had basically 4 dudes at positions that they shouldn't have been at if you were healthy, and you had the most historic Pitt rushing performance in the program's history. Yeah. And that's ridiculous. And I think that shows this group is growing. I think they're and sure, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, not good defenses. You know, like they're gonna those should be the teams that they bully. But I think that if they carry this forward, they get fresh, you know, during the bye week, and they come out, they can bully their way to a lot of wins in the ACC. They need the passing game to show up. But I think that behind this as a foundation, they can really, really, really do well they do well with this group and win the conference, or win the Coastal Division and get to the conference championship game again.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just to echo on your point too, with like all the other people, like Ryan Jacoby, another guy that they've moved over to tight end sometimes. He's primarily playing there now, but earlier in the season, you saw him playing at guard as well. And they just continue to get better and better. And as they get healthy after this bye, I have the ultimate amount of faith that they're going to continue to improve. We'll go over the opposite side of the ball now, defensive line. Chris, I'll start it off. Or did I start it off last time? I did. So you go ahead. Defensive line, what are you going to give them?
I've been very up and down with this group all season long. I'm going to go with a B- because I do think that
we're just reading each other's minds.
This is weird. This is weird. Stop agreeing with me.
I might honestly, for the written file, I might just condense it into one grade collectively because we're so close at this point.
But hey, it shows that you and I, we're great football minds. We think alike.
I hope so.
There we go. Yeah. But in all seriousness, like, they have not excelled in the way that I expected them to. You know, I expected this unit to come out and put, kick some people's butts. You know, open up a can of what. Like they should have been better. And there's guys who have. Kalijah Cansey is still a beast. He gets double teamed a lot, and it's like he's still getting his. I think, and there's guys who've been hurt. Deslin Alexander's been hurt. Haba Baldonado's been hurt. Dayon Hayes is hurt and it hasn't been out there. Like they've been missing a ton of guys. But like John Morgan, I think John Morgan's showing people that he wasn't just a cog in a machine last year.
John Morgan's been really good.
He's been really good this year, and I think some NFL teams definitely need to take a look at him. But again, I give him a B-. They did because I think they're leading the conference in sacks still, but they're still not like on the pace that they were last year, and that's where they need to get back to. And they might still during this year, but I think a lot of that also means it comes from them playing with leads. But if I'm giving them as a group B-, I think they can do better, and I think they will do better.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to give them a percentage of how well they've played compared to their potential, I'd say it's something in the low 80s. So that's why I gave them a B-. I think that they're by no means bad. I mean, a lot of teams in the country would trade what they have for what Pitt has to offer up front defensively, especially because of two guys specifically, number 8 and number 6. They're really good. And I think David Green's also been pretty good this year in the middle there. I just don't think they've played their best football yet, which really, again, says something that we're giving them a B- and we're saying their best is yet to come. It like you said, Chris, it goes with the high expectations that this group had, that they asked for, and that their stats merited. And I mean, they had 4 more sacks against Virginia Tech, 3 or 4 last weekend. Yep. And you have a good group when they're top 20 in the country in sacks, and it's looked at as them not reaching their full potential.
And that's why I won't give them anything below a B-.
Yeah.
It's more so because I know how good these like.
Correct.
I studied Haba Baldonado a lot last year and how his rise came to happen. I have such a high expectation. I think he's going to be playing on Sundays. I think Kalijah is definitely going to be playing on Sundays. I think John's going to be playing on Sundays. I think they got other guys. I think Deslin's going to be playing on Sundays. I think Dayon, if he can get healthy again, he'll be playing. They have a lot of guys. And I think Devin Danielson's. I'm also really encouraged by Sean Fitzsimmons. And we haven't even gotten, like, Elliot Donald can't get the field. And, like, this is the guy that everybody every week, if we had a Pitt mailbag, someone would be at, there's a question that I got. I was like, what about Elliot? Where is Aaron Donald's nephew? And I'm like, listen, they're stacked at that position. If this was the Pitt of old, maybe. But Charlie Partridge has coached up a lot of really good, talented guys that this program has recruited to the defensive line, and there's a long way for him to go. But that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
We'll move forward down to linebacker. I'll give a C+. I think that this linebacking group has just been slightly above average. And we might differ here. I think that Pitt's biggest flaw as a team so far defensively has been stopping the run. And I think the inconsistencies they've had sometimes at outside linebacker might be partially responsible for that. Part of it also might be schematically. I think, Shane and Bengali have improved over time. I think Servassier Dennis is probably the most irreplaceable player on this team on either side of the ball. And maybe. I think he's been pretty good. But overall, I think they're just slightly above average, maybe below average. I don't know. I think they're just a decent group. I think C+ is a fair grade. Chris, what about you?
I'll give him a C, just to be a little bit, because C, like we have been both on point with where we are at. But the C+, I think that's fair too. Servassier Dennis is extremely good. He's another guy playing on Sundays. And I think Shane Simons had good moments, but he's been inconsistent. But I think also part of it is Pitt's defense was spoiled because the guys last year, Phil Campbell III, John Partition, all those type of guys, they were 6-year. Chase Pine, they were all like 6-year players. Like
they just have those everywhere else now.
Right, exactly. And it's just like that's
honestly, it's the only area on the defense where there's any newcomers.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that these guys are learning to play. I think Bengali Kamara could end up being one of the best players in this team in the next couple of years, because his abilities when he puts it together are terrifying. I also think
he's one of the best athletes on the field.
Yes, absolutely.
His position, his speed is really impressive.
And he's tall, he's long, he's strong. Like he has all the right things. I think Tyler Wiltz has really stepped up. I thought he played his best game against Virginia Tech. He looked good. He even took over for the mic at Servassier Dennis's position, which I didn't think this team had somebody who could, because Brandon George was hurt in that game. So, I give it. You know what? I'll go with you. I'll rise up C+, because they have been better than just plain on average. But they do got to clean things up. They have to fit better against the run. And work those. And I think this is a group that can and will. They got some younger guys there. I think Solomon DeShields has shown a lot more. I think early in spring camp and in summer when we were looking at him, I think that he was a little bit lesser than they wanted of him. And then the first game, I think he also wasn't looking so great. But like the last 2-3 games, Solomon DeShields has stepped up. Again, they got talented guys.
All right, we'll finish off with the position groups with defensive back. Chris, your turn to go first.
B+.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, this is really the only different, like, where we're not just like one thing apart.
I think they could be better, but I also think Eric Hallett has played at an extremely high level.
Yeah.
And even though he's dropped interceptions and everything, this man has 3 picks. I think he has 8 or 9 passes defensed. He's all over the field. Like if he had intercepted those passes against Georgia Tech, they would have beaten Georgia Tech, and it wouldn't have been an initiative. He catches those. One of them's a pick 6. The other might be, but point being, he's played very well. He's covered up a lot more. A lot of teams have tried to go after him, and now teams don't try to go after him as much anymore. I think Brandon Hill is a very good, strong safety that they're able to float around. And the two of them are the strength here. I think MJ Devonshire has played very well when he's been targeted. And he gives you a really good shot out there. I think Marquez Williams has been really sharp at times. I think AJ Woods is probably the weak spot of the starters. He gets targeted a lot, and he gives up a lot of plays, and he's had some breakups, but I think he's the one that needs to clean up the most. But of those 5, if 4 out of 5 of them are in the pretty good range, you're a B plus group. I think that they keep they have been better at keeping the lid on big plays, I think, this year than they have in recent years. And that I am saying off the cusp. I didn't go back and look at all the long touchdowns this year compared to the last 2 seasons, but they seem like they are more in position. And I think that, you even saw it with Western Michigan when they played that team. They tried to go bubble screen and they were sitting on it and they were waiting for it, and they knew how to handle it. I think this secondary is just a lot smarter than it has been because of the experience.
I'm going to go with B minus. First things first, unless you have like Darrelle Revis and Deion Sanders in their prime, you're never going to have an A with the Pitt secondary, simply because of the way they put these guys on an island. Like, the reality is, based off of what Pitt's able to recruit at that position and the way they call defense, you're going to allow a couple big plays a game through the pass. And that's just part of it. But you sacrifice that for pressure up front, which, could be better, but still been good. I think the only reason I am not at where you're at with the B plus is, you talked about it, the drops have been crucial, and it's good to be in the right place at the right time. But those change games. Those interceptions, those takeaways, defensive touchdowns change games. You look at all the times they score on the defensive side of the ball last year. I mean, that put, everyone likes to point out the fake slide and, Izzy's 2 scores, but it was those defensive touchdowns that won them the ACC championship last year, I think. I mean, that it put Wake Forest to bed. So I just think that not being able to capitalize on it when that's kind of become, something that maybe you don't depend on, but something, a reliable resource that they're not getting, that they're not able to tap into, that's hurt them. I also think they've been called a lot for pass interference this season. You talked about Mr. Woods. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's gotten a couple calls against them. Devonshire has too, although I think that Devonshire has been far and away their best corner. You talked about how he's been good when targeted. Teams haven't been targeting him a lot lately. Yeah. They kind of tend to avoid number 12. So, and I think Williams he's been fine. I think he's been as good as what people expected him to be. I think they've been, like I said, with the defensive line, kind of, they're just, like around like a low 80%. I don't know if they can be much better. I think at its height, this is probably like a B quality group. The safeties, I think, have been good. Aside from Hallett dropping passes, he's still been their best, probably overall performer on the defensive side of the ball. And I think Brandon Hill is a really good player. I also will add real quick that I think some of the mistakes their backups have made have proved to be costly, just with, mental errors. I mean, I know Pat mentioned a mistake that PJ O'Brien made against Rhode Island that led to a long rushing touchdown, things like that. They're maybe not as deep there yet, although I am optimistic about what this group does have in that position moving forward. I just think that they have so much experience there. It's kind of like what you mentioned with Elliot Donald. You don't get to see him out on the field a lot. So we'll go to special teams now. This is an interesting one because I will say, I mean, they blocked a couple punts, right? But I think I got to give it like a D plus. I mean, over the recent weeks, I'll say this: Ben Sauls has been better. He hasn't missed a kick in a while, and that's good. However, if he does his job against Tennessee, Pitt's probably in a lot different spot than where, they are now. And just the punt returned. I mean, yeah, there's been moments. Like I said, PJ O'Brien's blocked punt against Tennessee. Haba blocked one last weekend. Obviously, Devonshire returned that kick for a punt for a touchdown against Rhode Island. Like, those are cool. And you see what they're capable of, but consistently, they've had 2 punts blocked against them. One wasn't returned for a touchdown. It was recovered for a touchdown. The other led to a touchdown the next play against West Virginia. So that's got to be docked. I don't think their kicking game is incredibly consistent, even though he has been better, like I said. And I don't know. I mean, kickoff has probably been their best thing. But even on punt return, I feel like at least once a game we're seeing a flag thrown on a punt return. So just hasn't been great. They've had some moments of excitement, but overall it's been by far their weakest third of the game, I think, between offense, defense, and special teams. Special teams has been by far the weakest.
Ben Sauls is 7 of 10 for 70%.
What's his
He's one of,
long? 40. He hit like a 46-yarder.
I think it was a 46-yarder. He is 3 of 4 from 40 yards out to 49 yards. He is 3 of 4 from 30 to 39. He is 1 of 2 from 20 to 29. So it's 48 is his long.
Okay.
That by itself, I think is decent. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's you have what you know what you have. He's just
right.
he's gonna make probably 3 out of 4 in any spot.
Mm-hmm. You have Sam Vanderhaar at the punter position, averaging 39 yards per punt.
When he catches the ball.
Huh?
When he catches the ball.
When he catches, and that's the other thing is that
and remembers to punt it.
He's allowed 2 blocks.
Yeah.
That have set up touchdown. Now here's the thing: is that crazy enough? Like normally, if you get a punt blocked in a game, you probably lost that game.
Yeah.
Because that comes back to bite you. But the 2 games he let him get blocked in West Virginia and Virginia Tech, and they won both. It's crazy. But I think that shows, to Pat Narduzzi's credit and this program's credit, how resilient they are in those moments. They don't. This team does not fold when things aren't going their way. I mean, when John Moore, you and I were sitting in that press box thinking, like, man, somebody's got to create a turnover. I kept saying it. Someone needs to create a turnover on that drive, or when John Morgan forced that fumble, like, it needs to come, and then it happened, and I was like, well, there it is. And then that was when I think they took the game over. I give special teams. I was trying to think if I could take it myself higher. I'll say a C- because I guess it's in the same range as a D+. But there's like MJ Devonshire's touchdown return, awesome. They've had good coverage for the most part. They've had some special teams penalties that I think they've needed to wipe out, but I think they did wipe those out in the last game. But the block punts are the biggest problem there.
They've been called for roughing the last 2 games.
They have. And the last game they got called for running
into. But still, I mean, that's just another thing. Like, it's not just one game. I feel like 9 times out of 10, when a punt is involved with Pitt, you're either getting just no return or there's going to be some sort of flag involved. And it's just, I don't know.
I feel you.
And last but not least, coaching. What do you got?
I was wondering if we were going to cover
We
coaching.
are. Or wait, I started the last one, so you can go ahead.
Coaching. It's an interesting grade because you could go across the board with the coordinators, but it all starts at the top with Pat Narduzzi. I give Pat a B.
Wow. Are we going? So you're going B for your grade just based off of Pat alone?
So, wait, are we grading each coach?
No, I'm saying coaching staff.
Coaching staff.
We didn't grade the running backs based off of just Israel Abanikanda. We didn't grade the receivers just based off of Jared Wayne.
That's fair.
So for me, I took into account how the defense has performed, how the offense has performed based upon its coordinator, same for defense, special teams, all of it.
I therefore say a B, because I do think that the coaching staff. One thing that people said that they were mad about, the biggest gripe I've had with this coaching staff is that they did not let Kedon Slovis work the passing game in the late part of Rhode Island when they needed to build some sort of chemistry going into the Georgia Tech game. That is the biggest coaching flaw I think that they've made this season. But otherwise, I think that they've been sharp. I think that they put this team in good position. When they lost to Georgia Tech, some people say, "Oh, they weren't getting up for the game. Oh, they were looking past them." No, everyone wanted to say the normal trap game mantra stuff. No, that was purely on that. But their guys were in position.
They just didn't execute.
They didn't execute, and those things you can say coaching if you want to, but you can't coach a defensive back to catch the football when it's thrown right to them. When they had multiple chances, I mean, in that game, I counted 5 dropped interceptions. They catch any one of them, they probably win that game. And of their 2 losses, you have that game where they had everything in front of them, and then you had the Tennessee game where you were down to a backup quarterback playing on one leg.
Yeah.
And that's not to say everything's clean. The run defense could be better. I think the pass game needs to be there, but they made a big coaching adjustment on Saturday by committing to the run as much as they did. I know that they want to be a balanced football team. They want defenses to honor both the run and the pass, but they just had to win with the run because they had to win with the run. I think that was a bold and strong call there to just say abandon the pass game right now. Let's go get this done and get this win. But the true test of how they are as a coaching staff will come the rest of the season when we see how they respond to more adverse moments, and you've played teams that aren't going to just be beaten by a one-dimensional offense.
I disagree with you here, Chris. I give Pitt's coaching staff a C- so far this year. I think their best coach game was against Western Michigan. I think that's when their best game plan was. I think that's when they were most locked in. And I mean, it followed a loss. They're coming off that Tennessee loss. They were, trying to get revenge on the road. It was their first road game, and they had a fourth string quarterback starting. They were clearly locked in there. I'm not saying they weren't locked in other games. I'm just saying that by far, I think offense, defense, special teams, best coach performance of the season for Pitt. And I think you can point to a lot of other games where you could say some good adjustments. Like you pointed out, the adjustment they made offensively in the second half against Virginia Tech Saturday. That's right. That's a good adjustment. You're correct there. I look at the defensive adjustments they made in the second half against Tennessee. Great adjustments. However, let's point out some of the bad things they've done. One of them being having Kedon Slovis in the offense go back out and run a meaningless play at the end of the first half against Tennessee that got him busted up. And
they did
cost you, honestly, a spot in the top 10 in the country, at least for a little bit. Probably based off of how everything else unfolded afterward. So that's a negative. You look at just the whole coaching. I disagreed with everything they did against Rhode Island, essentially. I just thought it was, and obviously you can't critique them too hard because they won, but they played that game like it was a practice. They didn't try anything risky. They played their backups and on defense, and it just, all of it was very uninspiring. So I didn't like that. And the Georgia Tech thing, I guess you can't hit them too hard because, like you said, the situations did call to throw the ball. The defensive players were in position to make the tackles or catch an interception. They just didn't execute. But overall, I think that, like, weighing pros and cons, the coaching has probably the pivotal coaching moments have probably hurt this team more than they've helped this team so far this year. I do think that'll change. I think Pat Narduzzi is a decent coach. All right. And I think that, his staff has,
you hear that, Pat?
has put together decent plans throughout here. They know what they're working with.
I don't think Pat's a decent coach. I think he's a great coach.
You can say that. I mean,
he's gonna say I have a good question. No, I'm just playing.
All right. Anyway,
but I'm with you. There are plenty of times that they have come up short, and I think that there are times that they need to make more adjustments. And there's times that I think that they've approached something hoping that something was going to manifest, and it didn't. And I think that has to change in the second half of the season.
Part of that's not having number 8 to bail them out when they do, make a mistake. And that goes for any coach. Sometimes a coach can make a mistake, but they're blessed to have a really good player and they bail them out. And, they have those guys, but they don't have that guy anymore. And another reason that goes into my C-, when you lose as a 22-point favorite at home, that affects my grading process. Like, I don't care. Like I just said, it goes on the players for executing. You're still the coaching staff. Like that does affect my grade for you. So to review real quick as we wrap it up, very long mailbag today, but I mean, hey, I think it was productive. I think people will enjoy it. Quarterback, for me, going down, quarterback D, running back A, wide receiver C-, O-line B, D-line B-, linebacker C+, defensive backs B-, special teams D+, coaching C-. Chris, a little bit of a more lenient grader than me. He's the nicer teacher of the two. Quarterback D+, running back A, wide receiver C-, offensive line B+, D-line B-, linebacker C+, defensive back B+, special teams C-, and coaching B. Carter, any final thoughts?
I think we did a good grading session there. You're going to run out of red ink, though, for all the corrections you're making.
That's all right. I mean, my mom's an English teacher. What does your dad teach?
Music teacher.
Okay, so yeah, he's a little less red pen.
A little less red ink.
Yeah, it's all right. Well, be sure to follow us on our social media platforms. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We got new content coming out every day on this channel. And we'll have more Pitt content and college football stuff coming out later this week. Until then, we'll see you around.